My name is Julian Vance, and until 6 months ago, I believed my life was a meticulously constructed masterpiece. At 41, I had navigated the treacherous currents of investment banking to a place of serene stability. My career wasn't just a job. It was the engine that powered the quiet hum of our four-bedroom house in one of Bellevue's most coveted neighborhoods, a structure of glass and cedar that was less a home and more a testament to success. I had a circle of friends who respected me, colleagues who deferred to my judgment, and a life that moved with the predictable, comforting rhythm of a Swiss watch. And then there was Serafina, my wife of 12 years, Sarah. Even her name suggested a kind of ethereal perfection. I believe she was as committed to the architecture of our life as I was. I saw our marriage as the foundation upon which everything else was built, solid, dependable, and true. I was wrong, catastrophically wrong. It's astonishing how an entire existence, 12 years of shared history and carefully laid plans, can be irrevocably fractured by a single, careless mistake. In Sarah's case, it was forgetting to take her phone with her into the shower. We had a rule, an unspoken agreement, really, about phones at home. No passwords, no secrets. It wasn't born of mistrust, or so I had told myself. It was a matter of practicality, a symbol of our transparency. That evening, the lie of that transparency was laid bare. As I poured myself a glass of water, her phone, lying face up on the cool marble of our kitchen island, lit up. The soft glow of the notification cut through the dim evening light like a blade. Room 317. Same as last time. Can't wait. The sender's name was there, stark and undeniable. Donovan Blackwood. Even if you'd never set foot in Bellevue, you'd heard the name. The Blackwood Development Group had sculpted the city's skyline for a generation. Their logo was a ubiquitous stamp of power on half the construction sites downtown. Donovan himself was a titan of industry, a fixture at every high society event, perpetually trailed by photographers and the faint scent of expensive cologne. He was always with his elegant wife, Eleonora Hayes, a woman whose quiet grace seemed a stark contrast to his booming charisma. I had met Eleonora several times at charity functions, soft-spoken, intelligent, with sad, knowing eyes that never quite reached the perfect smile she offered the world. Now, standing in my silent kitchen with the evidence of my wife's betrayal burning on a tiny screen, I finally understood the source of that sadness. My first instinct was a primal surge of rage, a white-hot flash of wanting to shatter something, the phone, the marble countertop, the serene illusion of my life. I imagined storming into the bathroom, confronting Sarah, the ugly, guttural sounds of accusation. But 20 years in finance teaches you one thing above all else. Emotion is the enemy of strategy. You don't win by screaming. You win by seeing the whole board, by anticipating the opponent's moves, and by acting with cold, deliberate precision when the time is right. I put the phone down, exactly as I had found it. My hands didn't shake. My breathing remained steady, a controlled rhythm in the sudden chaos of my mind. But inside, something fundamental had shifted. A load-bearing wall in the structure of my soul had just crumbled to dust. I walked to the liquor cabinet and poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon, the amber liquid a stark contrast to the glacial calm I forced upon myself. When Sarah emerged from the shower, wrapped in a plush white towel, her dark hair dripping onto her shoulders, I was sitting at the island, reviewing a portfolio report as if nothing had happened. The scene was a portrait of domestic tranquility, a cruel parody of the thousands of evenings we had spent just like this. "What time is the Henderson portfolio review tomorrow?" I asked, my voice a marvel of casual normalcy. 10:30, she said, toweling her hair. She reached for her phone, her thumb swiping across the screen. I watched her face, a canvas I thought I knew better than my own, searching for any flicker of reaction. A subtle tightening of the jaw, a brief shadow in her eyes. There was nothing. She glanced at the screen and then set it down without a change in her perfect, placid expression. She was good at this. Better than I could have ever imagined. "I might be home late tonight," she added, turning to the closet. The gala committee meeting might run long. The Bellevue Charity Gala, her biggest project of the year. The irony was a bitter pill. "No problem," I said, turning a page in the report. "I'll grab dinner with Mark." That was the first lie I had ever told her. I had no plans with Mark. As she dressed, I felt a profound and chilling detachment. I was no longer a husband in this room. I was an observer, a strategist gathering intelligence. The game had begun. Instead of meeting a friend, I drove downtown. My Audi felt like a stranger's car, the familiar leather and polished wood suddenly cold and impersonal. I parked across the street from the building where Sarah worked as an event coordinator, the engine humming quietly in the encroaching dusk. At 6:45 p.m., she emerged. She looked polished and professional in a tailored blazer and pencil skirt, the very image of the ambitious woman I had married. She didn't head toward the parking garage where her car was. Instead, she walked 3 blocks, her stride confident, and disappeared into the grand, revolving doors of the Warwick Hotel. Room 317. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The emotional part of my brain, the wounded husband, screamed at me to storm into that hotel, to kick down the door and confront them in their nest of lies. But the strategist, the man who now occupied the driver's seat of my soul, held me back. A public scene was messy. It was emotional. It surrendered control. And I would not surrender control. Instead, I started the car and drove to Brady's, a dive bar near our old apartment where Sarah and I used to go when our lives were simpler, when our love felt as real and unvarnished as the bar's worn wooden counter. The bartender Mike was still there, his hair grayer but his smile unchanged. "Julian Vance," he said as I slid onto a stool. "Been a while." "Too long, Mike," I agreed. "Bourbon. Neat." He poured a generous glass. "Celebrating something?" I took a long swallow, feeling the familiar burn. "The opposite." He nodded, the kind of deep, weary understanding that comes from listening to 30 years of other people's heartbreaks. "Want to talk about it?" "Not yet," I said. "Maybe after another one of these." 3 drinks later, the initial burn of rage had cooled into something harder, something more useful. Resolve. I made a call to a man named Mitch Corrigan. An ex-cop turned private investigator. Mitch owed me a favor after I'd helped restructure his brother's failing business years ago, saving it from bankruptcy. He was discreet, thorough, and owed me his loyalty. "I need surveillance," I said when he answered, my voice betraying no emotion. "Discreet, thorough, and immediate." "Oh, who's the target?" Mitch asked, his voice all business. I paused, the words feeling alien on my tongue. "My wife," I replied, "and Donovan Blackwood." There was a low whistle on the other end of the line. "The Donovan Blackwood? Jesus, Julian. Are you sure you want to open this door?" I watched the evening lights of Bellevue flicker on, casting long shadows across my dashboard. "I'm already through the door, Mitch. What I need now is proof. Everything. I want to know where they go, when they meet, what they buy. I want a timeline." For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was Julian Vance, devoted husband and successful investment banker. I smiled at Sarah over breakfast, kissed her goodbye as if her lips hadn't touched another man hours earlier, and listened intently as she described the challenges of planning the gala. At night, while she was supposedly working late or meeting with vendors, my phone would buzz with updates from Mitch. The emails were clinical, detached reports that detailed the slow-motion demolition of my marriage, photographs of them entering and exiting hotels, timestamps that corresponded perfectly with her fabricated meetings. The hardest part wasn't the deception itself. It was the crushing weight of normalcy. It was watching Sarah get dressed in the morning, knowing the beautiful silk blouse she chose would end up on the floor of Donovan Blackwood's hotel room. It was listening to her complain about a difficult caterer, knowing the most significant part of her day was the one she was meticulously editing out. It was lying next to her in our bed, the space between us a vast, frozen chasm, wondering if she was replaying moments with him in her mind. One evening, as we were preparing for a dinner with my colleagues, Sarah came out of our walk-in closet wearing a stunning cobalt blue dress I'd never seen before. "New?" I asked, adjusting my tie in the mirror, my reflection a mask of placid interest. "This old thing?" She lied smoothly, a practiced little laugh in her voice. "No, I've had it for ages. Just haven't worn it in a while." I knew for a fact that Donovan had bought her that dress. Mitch had sent me the photo 2 weeks earlier. The two of them shopping together at Neiman Marcus, the receipt a cold, itemized list of his affection. "You look beautiful," I told her. And the cruelest part was that I meant it. That was the part that twisted the knife. Despite the betrayal, the lies, the rage, I could still see the woman I had loved. 12 years is a long time to build a life with someone. It's too long to dismantle it overnight. "You're staring," Sarah said, a hint of nervousness in her voice. "Just appreciating the view," I replied, forcing a smile. The game was exhausting, but I was playing to win. The evidence piled up, a monument to my wife's deceit. Photos, credit card statements, hotel receipts. The affair had been going on for 7 months, right under my nose, a secret world thriving in the shadows of my own. I had enough to file for divorce, enough to ensure a settlement that was decidedly in my favor. But it wasn't enough. Divorcing Sarah felt like treating a symptom, while the disease, Donovan Blackwood, walked away unscathed. Then one night, Mitch called me to his cluttered office. The air smelled of stale coffee and grim satisfaction. He slid a thick folder across his desk. "This is bigger than an affair, Julian," he said. "Donovan Blackwood is in trouble. Deep trouble." I opened the folder. It wasn't filled with grainy photos, but with financial statements, internal memos, and bank transfer records. "What is this?" "Financial trouble," Mitch explained. "His company has been using new investor funds to cover massive losses on older projects. They've been falsifying reports, moving money between shell corporations, classic Ponzi scheme stuff, but on a scale that would make Madoff blush." My mind, the mind of an investment banker, processed the information with lethal speed. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a massive criminal enterprise. "How did you get this?" Mitch shrugged. "I have a contact at the SEC who owes me. They're building a case, but these things take time. Meanwhile, Blackwood is still whining and dining investors, living large." "While sleeping with my wife," I added, my voice flat. "While sleeping with your wife," Mitch confirmed. "So, what are you going to do?" I closed the folder. A new strategy began to form in my mind, cold and clear. The objective had changed. This was no longer just about ending a marriage. This was about justice. Donovan Blackwood had taken something precious from me. Now, I would take everything from him. That night, as Sarah slept beside me, or pretended to, I lay awake, the pieces of a complex plan locking into place. My first step was to find Eleonora Hayes. It wasn't difficult. She volunteered at the Bellevue Art Museum every Wednesday afternoon, leading tours for school groups. I waited until her tour finished, then approached her in the museum cafe as she sat alone with a cup of tea. "Mrs. Hayes," I said, "my name is Julian Vance." Recognition flickered in her eyes. They were even sadder up close. "Yes, Seraphina's husband. We've met. May I join you?" She hesitated, then gestured to the chair opposite her. "Of course." I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I'll be direct. I have something important to discuss with you. Something deeply personal." She stirred her tea, her movements slow and deliberate. "I'm listening." I placed a manila envelope on the table between us. "Before you open this, I want you to know that I struggled with this decision. But ultimately, I believe you deserve to know the truth." Her hand hovered over the envelope. "What kind of truth?" "The kind that changes everything." She opened it with steady hands. Inside were 5 photographs. The first showed Donovan and Sarah entering the Warwick together. The second captured them kissing in an elevator, his hand possessively on her hip. The others were equally damning. She studied each one methodically, her expression a carefully controlled mask. When she finished, she arranged them in a neat stack and returned them to the envelope. 7 months, I said quietly. That's how long it's been going on. A single tear escaped and slid down her cheek. She wiped it away with a swift, angry motion. "I've known something was wrong," she whispered. "He's been distant, secretive with his phone, working late." She gave a bitter, humorless laugh. "I guess he wasn't working after all." "There's more," I said, and slid a second, thicker envelope across the table. This one contained the highlights of Mitch's financial findings. As she reviewed the documents, her composure finally cracked. Her face went pale. "Oh my God," she whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. "He's going to prison." "Yes," I confirmed. "It's only a matter of time." She looked up at me, her sad eyes suddenly sharp, analytical. "Why are you showing me this? Why not just divorce your wife and let my husband get caught in his own mess?" I leaned forward, my voice low. "Because that's not enough. They betrayed us. They humiliated us and thought we were too stupid or too weak to notice. I don't just want to end my marriage, Eleonora. I want them to face what they've done publicly." Her eyes narrowed as she began to understand my endgame. "What are you suggesting?" "The annual Bellevue Charity Gala is in 3 weeks. Your husband is being honored as the top donor. My wife is coordinating the entire event." A long moment of silence stretched between us. She traced the rim of her teacup, her mind clearly racing. "My friends call me Eleonora," she said finally, her voice firm. "And if we're going to destroy my husband together, I think we should be on a first-name basis." A slow, cold smile spread across my face. Eleonora, it is. Our alliance was forged in the quiet, sterile atmosphere of the museum cafe, a pact sealed by shared betrayal. For the next 3 weeks, Eleonora and I became co-conspirators. We met in clandestine coffee shops in different parts of town, never the same place twice, communicating through burner phones. It may have been excessive, but we were dealing with a man who had everything to lose, and we couldn't risk a single misstep. During these meetings, I discovered the woman behind the society wife facade. Eleonora was brilliant. She'd given up a promising career as an environmental attorney to support Donovan's ambitions, a sacrifice he had repaid with deceit. She was smarter than him, more perceptive, and now more ruthless. One afternoon, as we were finalizing details at a small cafe in Cherry Creek, Eleonora suddenly froze, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. "Don't turn around," she whispered, her voice tight. Sarah just walked in. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my expression neutral. Alone? Yes, she's at the counter. An idea, sharp and wicked, sparked in my mind. "Follow my lead," I said, and reached across the table, taking Eleonora's hand in mine. I squeezed it gently, a gesture of intimacy that was entirely for an audience of one. Just as Sarah turned from the counter, coffee in hand, I heard her sharp intake of breath. I felt her presence behind me before she spoke, her voice laced with confusion. "Julian?" I turned, feigning surprise. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" Her eyes darted between me and Eleonora, then down to our joined hands. Suspicion and confusion warred on her face. "I had a meeting nearby. I didn't realize you two were friends." "Eleonora and I just ran into each other," I said smoothly, not releasing Eleonora's hand. "We got to talking about the gala. She has some incredible ideas for the presentation." Eleonora, a consummate actress, smiled, her composure perfect. "Sarah, so good to see you. Your husband has been telling me how proud he is of all your work on the event." Sarah's professional mask slipped into place, but not before I glimpsed the panic beneath it. "How nice. Julian doesn't usually take such an interest in my fundraisers." "People change," I said, my eyes locked with hers, "sometimes in surprising ways." She shifted uncomfortably. "Well, I should get back to the office. Nice seeing you both." She hurried out, leaving the coffee she'd just ordered on the counter. I turned back to Eleonora, who released my hand with a shaky laugh. "That was close." "Actually," I said, "it was perfect. Now they'll be worried, off balance, wondering what we know." "Do you think she'll tell Donovan?" "Immediately," I confirmed. "And he'll tell her it's nothing, that it's just a coincidence. But they'll both be scared." My prediction was correct. That night, Sarah was overly attentive, asking about my day with an unnatural interest. When she tried to initiate intimacy for the first time in months, I made an excuse about an early meeting. The flash of hurt in her eyes gave me a grim, hollow satisfaction. 2 days later, the real ripple effect began. Mitch called with news. "Blackwood's panicking," he reported. "He's liquidating assets, moving money offshore. My SEC contact says they're accelerating their investigation." Then Donovan made his move. I was leaving my office when a man approached me in the parking garage. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the dead eyes of someone who solved problems for cash. "Mr. Vance," he said, blocking my path. I tensed. "Who's asking?" "Name's Reeves. I work for Mr. Blackwood." He didn't offer a hand. "Mr. Blackwood would like to have a conversation with you." "Tell him to call my secretary for an appointment," I replied, attempting to step around him. Reeves moved to block me again. "This isn't that kind of conversation. Mr. Blackwood values his privacy." "As do I," I said coolly. "So you can tell your boss that if he has something to say, he can say it through proper channels." His expression hardened. He put a heavy hand on my chest, pushing me back a step. "I don't think you understand the situation. Mr. Blackwood isn't asking." I looked pointedly at his hand until he removed it. I felt no fear, only a surge of cold fury. This was the man my wife had chosen, a man who hid behind thugs. "Actually, I understand perfectly," I said, my voice low and steady. "Your boss is sleeping with my wife and running a Ponzi scheme. Now he's sent you to intimidate me because he's terrified I'm going to expose him. So let me be clear." I took a step closer, invading his space. "If anything happens to me, if I so much as slip in the shower, a package of detailed evidence of Donovan Blackwood's financial fraud will be delivered to the SEC, the Bellevue PD, and every major news outlet in the state. So you can go back to your boss and tell him that he can't buy me and he can't scare me. The man, Reeves, blinked, momentarily thrown off his script. The intimidation was gone, replaced by a flicker of calculation. I walked past him to my car. He didn't try to stop me again. I knew Donovan had received the message. He was a predator who preyed on those he perceived as weak. He now knew I was not weak. The game had just been raised to a new level. The attempted intimidation was a sign of desperation, and it only hardened my resolve. Eleonora and I pressed forward, our plan for the gala crystallizing into a masterpiece of strategic destruction. The event was being held at the Bellevue Art Museum, in a new wing that, in a twist of delicious irony, the Blackwood family had helped fund. 800 of the city's elite would be there, including dozens of Donovan's investors. It was the perfect stage. The key was the multimedia presentation. As the honoree, Donovan was to be introduced with a video tribute highlighting his philanthropic contributions. Eleonora, as a museum board member, had access to the presentation. She arranged for our modified version, a digital Trojan horse, to be substituted at the last minute. But we needed more than just social embarrassment. We needed legal consequences, swift and undeniable. We need the SEC there, I told Eleonora during our final planning meeting, and the police. We need to ensure he can't charm his way out of this. How do we do that without tipping our hand? She asked. I smiled. We give them an anonymous tip, timed to coincide perfectly with our presentation. The night before the gala, I decided it was time to drop the curtain with Sarah. The pretense had become unbearable. We were preparing for bed, a routine that now felt like a grotesque play. Working late again tomorrow, I assume? I asked, my tone casual. You know I am. The gala is the biggest fundraiser of the year, she said, her back to me as she applied night cream, focused on her reflection. I let the silence hang for a moment before I delivered the first blow. Room 317 at the Warwick must have quite a view. Her hands froze mid-motion. In the mirror, I watched her expression cycle through confusion, shock, and then a desperate calculation. What are you talking about? She attempted, but her voice wavered. Don't, I said quietly, the word sharp as a shard of glass. Don't make this worse by lying more than you already have. She turned to face me, her features composing into what I now recognize as her negotiation face, the same expression she used when trying to get a vendor to lower their price. Julian, I think we should talk about this calmly. 7 months, Sarah. With Donovan Blackwood. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? It's not what you think, she began. I cut her off with a harsh laugh. That is literally the most cliché response you could have chosen. What is it then? Business meetings that require room service and tangled sheets. Her facade cracked. Fine, she snapped. Yes, Donovan and I have been seeing each other. It happened gradually. She tried to frame it as a romance, a story of two people swept away by circumstance. We were working together, spending late nights planning. Things developed. Things developed, I repeated, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. That's how you describe betraying your marriage vows. I was going to tell you, she insisted, tears welling in her eyes. After the gala, Donovan and we've been talking about our future. He's going to leave Eleonora. I had to turn away to hide the grim smile. Is that what he told you? That he loves you? Yes, she said, a note of defiance in her voice. And I believe him. And what about his financial problems? I asked, turning back to face her. Did he mention those? Her expression faltered. What financial problems? Donovan Blackwood is broke, Sarah. Worse than broke. He's been running a Ponzi scheme with his investors' money. He's about to lose everything, including his freedom. Oh, that's a lie, she said, but the doubt was a creeping shadow in her eyes. His company is extremely successful. It was, I corrected her. Now it's a house of cards, and it's about to collapse. I walked to the door of our bedroom, the room where we had built our life, now the scene of its demolition. Enjoy the gala tomorrow. I hear it's going to be quite memorable. And I spent the night in the guest room, listening to the muffled sounds of her pacing and making frantic, whispered phone calls. Around 2 a.m., I heard the front door open and close. I went to the window and watched her car speed away into the night. A quick call to Mitch confirmed my suspicions. She went straight to Blackwood's penthouse, he reported 20 minutes later. Looks like they're having a late-night strategy session. It was nearly dawn when she returned, looking exhausted and tense. The game was in its final, thrilling moments. The night of the gala arrived, thick with anticipation. The air around the museum crackled with the energy of 1,000 false smiles and the rustle of designer gowns. As I pulled up to the valet, I watched the city's elite glide up the red carpet, a parade of practiced insincerity. As planned, I met Eleonora 2 blocks away. When she slid into my passenger seat, I almost didn't recognize her. Gone was the understated, tasteful elegance she usually favored. Tonight, she was a vision of defiance in a daring crimson gown, with a plunging neckline, her blonde hair styled in loose waves, her makeup dramatic and flawless. She was not a victim tonight. She was a warrior. "You look different," I said, my voice filled with genuine admiration. "Tonight isn't about being tasteful," she replied, a dangerous glint in her eyes. "It's about being noticed." And we were. As we walked arm in arm up the red carpet, a ripple of whispers followed us. Eleanora Hayes with Julian Vance. "Where's Donovan? Where's Sarah?" It was the opening salvo. Inside the grand hall, I spotted Sarah immediately. She was stunning in a black gown, a clipboard in her hand, directing staff with a frantic energy. When she saw us, she froze mid-sentence, the color draining from her face. Across the room, Donovan was holding court with a group of older men investors, I assumed. Eleanora squeezed my arm. "Ready?" she whispered. "Absolutely." We made our way through the crowd, accepting champagne flutes from a passing waiter. Donovan spotted us when we were about 10 feet away. His expression cycled rapidly through confusion, shock, and then a forced, booming joviality. "Eleanora, there you are," he called out, his voice a little too loud. "And Julian Vance. What a surprise." "Aye, Donovan," Eleonora replied, her voice cool as ice. "I thought I'd arrive with someone whose company I genuinely enjoy for a change." The men around Donovan shifted uncomfortably. The air grew thick with tension. He tried to steer her away, suggesting a private discussion, but Eleonora was unmovable. "Oh, I don't think so," she said, her voice carrying. "I'm tired of privacy, aren't you, darling? All those private hotel rooms, private bank accounts. Let's be public for once." "Oh." Just then, a voice announced that dinner would be served. As we took our seats at the head table, a seating arrangement Eleonora had brazenly rearranged. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Donovan sat between the museum director and his wife, while I sat beside Eleonora. Sarah, her face a mask of professional poise, betrayed only by her white-knuckled grip on her wineglass, was seated directly across from us. Dinner was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Eleanora and I played the part of a new, enamored couple, laughing and touching, while Donovan downed 3 scotches in rapid succession, and Sarah looked as if she might shatter. When the museum director finally stood to begin the program, Donovan had the hunted look of an animal caught in a trap. Eleanora reached under the table and squeezed my hand. The moment had arrived. "And so, it is my great pleasure to introduce tonight's honoree, Mr. Donovan Blackwood," the director concluded. "Please enjoy this short presentation, highlighting his many contributions." The lights dimmed. The large screen behind the stage flickered to life. For the first 30 seconds, it was exactly what everyone expected. Professional footage of Donovan at groundbreaking ceremonies, presenting oversized checks to charities, his voice, taken from some business interview, narrated over the images. Then, the video changed. "What I've learned in business," Donovan's voice continued smoothly, "is that perception is everything." On the screen, an image appeared. Donovan and Sarah entering the Warwick Hotel, a timestamp clearly visible in the corner. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. I saw Sarah drop her wine glass, the red liquid blooming like a bloodstain across the white tablecloth. "The public sees what we want them to see," his voice narrated, as the screen now displayed financial documents, bank transfers, falsified reports, clear evidence of the massive fraud. Numbers were highlighted, revealing the millions missing from investor accounts. Donovan lunged to his feet. "Turn it off," he roared. "This is fabricated, a smear campaign." But the presentation continued relentlessly. More photos of him and Sarah, more financial evidence. The crowd was in an uproar. Investors were shouting. The museum director was frantically signaling to the tech booth, but the technician, who had been well compensated for his temporary deafness, ignored him. As the final, damning image faded from the screen, I stood and raised my champagne glass. "I'd like to propose a toast," I announced, my voice carrying across the now hushed room, "to truth and to consequences." On cue, the massive doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. A team of SEC agents and Bellevue police officers strode purposefully down the center aisle. The lead agent, a stern woman in a dark suit, approached our table. "Donovan Blackwood." "This is outrageous," he blustered, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm Special Agent Meredith Keaton with the Securities and Exchange Commission," she said calmly. "You're under arrest for securities fraud, wire fraud, and investment advisor fraud." The ballroom erupted into chaos. As officers stepped forward with handcuffs, Sarah clutched at my sleeve, her face streaked with mascara. "Julian, please," she begged, her voice cracking. "Tell me you didn't do this." I gently removed her hand from my arm. "You made your choice, Sarah. You chose him, his lifestyle, his lies. Now you get to live with the consequences of that choice." As Donovan was led away, shouting about his lawyers, Eleonora appeared at my side. She slipped her arm through mine, a gesture that felt surprisingly natural. "Shall we go?" she suggested, her voice calm amidst the storm. "I think our work here is done." We walked out of the gala, leaving the chaos and the wreckage behind us. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. For the first time in months, I felt like I could finally breathe. The fallout was swift and merciless. The story was a supernova in Bellevue social circles. By morning, everyone knew that Donovan Blackwood, the titan of real estate, had been arrested for massive financial fraud, while his wife had arrived at the gala on the arm of his mistress's husband. My divorce from Sarah was finalized with quiet efficiency. I met her one last time in a sterile hotel restaurant. She looked hollowed out, a ghost of the vibrant woman she had once been. She had lost her job, her social standing, and the future she had gambled everything on. "I made a terrible mistake," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "7 months isn't a mistake, Sarah," I replied, my voice devoid of malice, only a profound and weary sadness. "It's a campaign." I looked at her, this woman I had once planned to grow old with, and felt a final definitive closure. "I believe you are sorry," I said as I stood to leave. "But you're not sorry because you hurt me. You're sorry because you bet on the wrong man and lost everything." She didn't deny it. She couldn't. In the weeks and months that followed, Eleanor and I found an unexpected solace in each other's company. We were two survivors of the same shipwreck, fluent in a language of betrayal that no one else could understand. We met for coffee, then dinner, sharing stories not of our broken marriages, but of the lives we had lived before them, the people we had been. We were cautious, both of us scarred, but there was an undeniable connection between us, a foundation built not on illusion, but on a shared, hard-won truth. Donovan Blackwood pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, his empire dismantled, his name a synonym for disgrace. About a year after the gala, Eleonora launched her new foundation. She stood at a podium in a sunlit room, looking radiant and purposeful. "After experiencing firsthand how financial predators can shatter lives," she said, her voice clear and strong, "I wanted to create a resource for those who feel powerless, a place to fight back." She had called it the Veritas Project. Veritas, the Latin word for truth. I stood at the back of the room, watching her with a pride that felt clean and whole. She had transformed her pain into purpose, her personal tragedy into a public service. She had taken the ugliest chapter of her life and used it to write a beautiful new one. Later that night, we stood on the balcony of her new downtown condo, looking out at the glittering Bellevue skyline, a skyline no longer dominated by the Blackwood name. She leaned her head against my shoulder. "Do you think we'll ever fully trust again?" she asked quietly. I thought about Vincent, sitting in a prison cell. I thought about Sarah, starting over in a new city. I thought about the pieces of ourselves that had been broken, and the new strength we had found in the aftermath, together. "I think we already do," I said, and turned to kiss her under the vast starry sky. Some say that revenge is a dish best served cold. They're wrong. The best revenge isn't cold at all. It's the searing heat of truth burning away lies. It's standing tall when others expected you to crumble. It's finding a strength you never knew you had. And sometimes, if you are very, very lucky, it's finding someone who understands exactly what you've been through and who is ready to walk with you into whatever comes next.